We have a very special guest joining us to talk about quite a few things. Hopefully, if we can squeeze as much as possible into the next 20 minutes or so. His name is Lee Smith. He's a longtime journalist and author of many books. His specialty on the Middle East, The Strong Horse, written some years ago. More recently, he's known for The Plot Against the President, and then this one right here from 2020, The Permanent Coup. Mr. Smith, welcome to the Trumpet Daily.
Stephen, thank you so much for inviting me on today. It's a real pleasure and an honor too.
It's great to have you. I wanted to start. You don't have to comment too much on the politics from last night if you don't want to, but I did want to start with the Rachel Maddow's meltdown at MSNBC, because I feel like I don't want to give your stirring conclusion away from the permanent coup, but I think it ties in with just how you finished your book. So let's go ahead and start with clip 9, Sam.
And I don't mean to be, again, too dark, as you said, on this, but it is not. If we are worried about the rise of authoritarianism in this country, we are worried about potential rise of fascism in this country. If we're worried about our democracy falling to an authoritarian and potentially fascist form of government, the leader who is trying to do that is part of that equation. But people wanting that is a much bigger part of that equation. Right. And the American electorate is made up of two major parties. One of those parties has been flirting with extremism on the ultra-right for a very long time. Once you have radicalized one major party so that those are the preferences of the people who adhere to your party, the leader's interchangeable. And yes, Trumpism is sometimes what we call it. MAGA movement is probably a better way to do it. But there is an authoritarian movement inside Republican politics that isn't being bamboozled by Trump. They are pushing Trump to get more and more extreme, because the more extreme things he says, the more they adhere to him. And that is coming from a very large proportion of the American right that adheres to the Republican Party. And that's why this is a Republican Party problem more than it is the problem of one man.
I just think it's interesting there that, the end of democracy, Trump is Hitler. We've been hearing that in the last few months. But there it's not even Trump now. It's the whole movement. And I mean, it's almost like you said at the end of your book, you either choose our side or it's war. What is your reaction to what Maddow had to say last evening?
Well, I'm glad they're worried. I'm glad they're scared. I'm glad they're using that kind of fearful language to drive their own listeners crazy. The reality is, first of all, Rachel Maddow's a lunatic. But the fact is that people have been saying for months, including Rachel Maddow and others, oh, Donald Trump, he's angry, it's retribution, it's revenge, it's this, it's that. It's like, Donald Trump is the least of their worries, right? Donald Trump is not the issue. The issue is the people who are voting for Donald Trump or supporting Donald Trump. And if Rachel Maddow thinks that Donald Trump supporters want a piece of people like Rachel Maddow, I'm not talking about violence, I'm not talking about force. I'm talking about setting things straight. Look at what's happened since 2016. The president that Americans elected, Donald Trump, was jammed up for several years on the Russiagate garbage, right? That's the first thing. The president that they elected was not allowed to govern because he had to fight off this Russiagate crap. Then look at all the other things that went on during the Trump administration. Look at the way the corporate and political establishment hurt not only Donald Trump, but the American public, right? Let's remember everything from mask mandates to Joe Biden's famous COVID mandates. Let's look at all the different lockdowns. Let's look at how people have been hurt. Let's look at the censorship. Let's look at the lies. Let's look at the weaponization of the federal government, targeting January 6th defendants, using the FBI to go after PTA parents, using the FBI to go after pastors, to go after Catholics. It's absurd. So of course the American public is upset. And of course the American public wants something from people like Rachel Maddow and the gang at CNN and the gangs at the Washington Post, at the New York Times. And you know what? They should be worried, because it's not a revenge tour of Donald Trump. It's not a retribution tour. It's a matter of setting things right. And the American people since 2016 have been looking for a platform, right? Someone who will govern them correctly and someone who will at this point, it's not about reining in the elite. At this point, it's about destroying the elite. So thank goodness Rachel Maddow is worried. Let's hope that for the next 10 months, she evinces more and more panic, and she drives the rest of her followers absolutely nuts, even nuttier than they already are, because that's what I'm expecting. I'm looking at COVID-level panic from the left, thanks to people like Rachel Maddow for not understanding what they've done to the American public for the last 8 years at least. Of course, much longer, but certainly since the beginning of the Donald Trump era.
Yeah. Just in going through your book last night, reliving 2020, it wasn't pleasant. Just going through all that happened in that year, and you said right at the end, the point of that you're talking about all of the protests in the summer of 2020. The point of the protests and the coup, of which they were a central component, was plain. If you want peace and stability, restore the party of Obama and let him complete his work, the transformation of America. Choose Trump and you choose war. I just want to focus in on the transformation. You allude to that fundamental transformation that Obama was talking about before he was elected in 2008. And there weren't, as I recall, there weren't that many commentators that made that big of a deal out of it. You've talked about it at length in your articles at Tablet, in your books. When was it that alarmed you? Was it right when it happened, or was it maybe a few years after he said that in 2008?
I mean, as you mentioned before, I reported from the Middle East. I lived in the Middle East for several years. It's the language of the Middle East. It's the language of third world regimes, what Barack Obama was doing. And I certainly wasn't alone. I mean, there were people who were watching the videos that looked like they were praising, the leaders of North Korea, the songs with the children. I mean, it was perverse. It was obscene. It was absolutely un-American. And look, if your great audience is interested in really going back to someone who knew what was happening, they should go back and read the late Fouad Ajami, Ajami, who wrote an editorial in the Wall Street Journal. I believe it was 2007, though it may have been 2008. And Ajami lived in Beirut. He was Lebanese, proud American patriot. He was born in Lebanon, and he warned Americans what was going on with this language. It was not American language, and that's who Barack Obama is. He is an alien. He is alien to America.
That's pretty amazing. Just one more quote. You said Trump's former national security, well, you talked about targeting Flynn, and we can talk about him in a moment if we have some time, but you said, thus he had not only claimed responsibility for the coup, but speaking of Obama, but he'd also shed light on its ultimate goal, the rationale for destabilizing the country in the hope of removing Trump from office was to hold out until Obama's vision could be restored. And so we've emphasized really that this has been a 15, 16-year operation, because even you bring out in your book how that when Obama left office in 2017, he just went down the street to his mansion in D.C. and during the Trump years, he was running the shadow government, so to speak, and then, as you say, trying to destroy Trump's presidency. And then now we certainly feel, and I think you do as well, that he's pretty much the one running the show today. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I got wrong. I really appreciate you reading from that book. That's very kind of you. I hope you're not going to drive your readers crazy with it. Look, here's one thing I got wrong. I thought the purpose of destabilizing Donald Trump was simply to get rid of Donald Trump, right? It wasn't. The purpose of destabilizing Donald Trump, as we now see in the Biden years, the purpose of destabilizing the United States under Donald Trump is because Barack Obama is an agent of chaos, right? Look at the instability he's brought to the United States right now, even with his own handpicked candidate. He's an avatar for Barack Obama. Look at what's happening. People are watching. They see it happening on TV. Pro-Hamas protesters throughout American cities, at American college campuses. Barack Obama is an agent of destabilization, right? And what this describes it describes a pathological regime. People are using a lot of different languages, a lot of different phrases, words to explain what the Obama faction looked looks like. Is it Marxist? Is it communist? I don't know. Maybe it's socialist. Maybe it's oligarchic. It's like this. It's pathological. That's what it is. This is very important for people to understand, right? Normal people say, "Wow, it looks like what they're doing is crazy." Take that insight to heart. These are crazy people. When you see the crazy people that Joe Biden has brought into his administration, that tells you that this is a crazy faction. That's what's going on. And the people, the animals who are out in the street protesting on behalf of Arab terrorists, they're a part of the regime, right? These are Democratic Party militias, right? Even though they were attacking the White House recently, and they're against Joe Biden, they just want more, right? They want Biden even farther out there. They want Barack Obama even farther out there. So I think that's what's important for people to understand. This regime is pathological, and it's an extraordinarily dangerous political faction. Take your insights seriously. Believe what you see. Believe what you feel. It's pathological, demonic, if you will, if you prefer.
Yeah. You made a comment, I think it was just about a year ago, this week in one of your articles. You said, and if you could just elaborate on this for us, we've quoted it in some of our material, but you said a whole of society industry designed to shape elections and censor, propagandize, and spy on Americans was never simply a weapon to harm Donald Trump. It was designed to replace the Republic. Replace the Republic. Yes. Yeah. If you could elaborate on that, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, we look around and we see the pillars of the constitutional republic laid to waste, and we can look at the Bill of Rights and how many of the Bill of Rights have been abrogated, including freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. This is what January 6th is about. We look at the different people who the January 6th defendants who have been denied bail, denied a speedy trial. So so in terms of the constitutional republic, this has been under siege for many years now. But certainly it was Barack Obama who led the assault against the pillars of the constitutional republic. What I mean about replacing is what we're seeing a third world style pathological regime. If you want to talk about Russiagate just for 1 second, what I tried to explain what was going on with Russiagate, because a lot of people misunderstand. They look at Rachel Maddow, for instance, crazy, partisan, liberal, left-wing press. It's not that. We're well past the partisanship of the media. What we're talking about is an intelligence operation. That's what the press is. That's what MSNBC is. That's what the Washington Post and the New York Times are, right? We're joining the intelligence apparatus, past and current intelligence officials, to the media. That's the third world right there. And that's what we're seeing happen. A corrupt, pathological regime means to replace the constitutional republic.
Fundamental transformation. That's right. Today's actually the, 8-year anniversary of the implementation of the JCPOA. It was January 16th, 2016. You got to get my decade right. But you've written about how that was part of the fundamental transformation, and you also tied it into the way that Obama really targeted General Mike Flynn, because he was against that when coming into the office that he was in just briefly at the first start of the Trump presidency. So why was it that Obama went after Flynn so hard because of that?
Because the Iran nuclear deal was not only the central foreign policy initiative of the Barack Obama years, it was also an instrument that he used to transform the United States. A lot of people wonder, and they look now at the pro-Hamas stuff, right? Where did this come from? Since we know that, American college kids are excessive and they do some nutty stuff and they believe some nutty things or whatever, but pro-Hamas, pro-terror, it was only a little more than 20 years ago when the same people standing up for the same causes took down the World Trade Center, attacked the Pentagon. So now this is a popular cause. Yes, this is what Barack Obama's deal with a terror state that embodies Jew hatred. That's what it was meant to do. It was meant to legitimize these different pathologies. So this was very important, not just in terms of our foreign policy, which was to degrade traditional allies, especially in the Middle East, like Israel, like Saudi Arabia, and elevate Iran, again, a terror state. It was also meant to transform the domestic arena as well. In particular, the Democratic Party, right? What it did to the Democratic Party was it was meant to relegate centrist Jews to a marginal position. Now, instead of centrist Jews, what we're going to do is we're going to elevate the psychopaths, the real nuts, and that's what the Iran deal did on the domestic arena. It elevated the psychopathic, right? And it's not just in the Democratic Party, of course. It's all throughout the country.
You talked about elevating the psychopaths and distancing yourself from traditional allies like Israel. I think you said in one of your articles last year that this anti-Benjamin Netanyahu movement, it's very similar to the anti-Trump movement here, and that it's a lot of the same players that are going from the states, I think you meant, that are going after Bibi. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I mean, if the cash flow, for instance, but the State Department was doing this. The State Department was doing this under Barack Obama as well. The Democratic Party has a bad relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, in part because Benjamin Netanyahu is not a Democrat. If you look at a lot of Israeli leadership, there are a lot of people who are closer, like Ehud Barak, for instance, to Democratic Party leadership. Netanyahu is not, so the Democratic Party of this country has done their best to destroy Netanyahu. So the protests against his judicial reform, a lot of these were supported by not only by U.S. government funding, but of course all sorts of U.S. NGOs. Right? I mean, the names are familiar. People like George Soros. So the larger picture, of course, though, it's not just to weaken or collapse Benjamin Netanyahu's government, but of course, right now with Israel at war, it's intended to destabilize Israel, right? Traditional U.S. ally that the Obama faction believes needs to be destabilized. Why? Again, to elevate its psychopathic partners like the Islamic Republic of Iran and its allies like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Right. And this is a very important thing. What did the nuclear deal do? It empowered not just Iran, but Iran's allies. And people are looking right now at what's happening in the Red Sea, and they're looking at what's happening. Oh my goodness! All these, all the shipping is being rerouted around Africa. They can't go through the Red Sea because the Houthis are attacking them. Well, let's imagine what this is all going to look like if Iran gets a nuclear weapon. Right? Iran is going to have the ability to set the prices in all sorts of global markets, including energy. But this was the plan of Barack Obama, and this is why Joe Biden, of course, still wants to re-enter the nuclear deal with Iran that Donald Trump wisely withdrew from in May 2018.
Yeah. You wrote last year regarding the JCPOA that plan was never to stop Iran from getting the bomb. Rather, the tens of billions of dollars that Obama paid the clerical regime, which included plane loads of cash, was to facilitate construction of the nuclear weapons program. And then yesterday we have the Fox News headline that said Biden's Iran de-escalation strategy backfiring as regime close to producing an atomic bomb. Pretty amazing. I mean, why would Obama throw his support behind that movement, that effort for them to get a bomb?
American foreign policy historically, some of it's rhetoric, but a lot of it's very true, is that we are allied with people who share our values. That's not always the case. Of course, we partnered with the Soviet Union to defeat the Nazis in World War II, and we've partnered with other people who don't necessarily. Saudi Arabia shares some of our values, not an awful lot of them, right? But this is the idea. A lot of American foreign policymakers believe that we're best partnered, best allied with people who share our values. Well, for Barack Obama, that's the same thing. And what I mean by that is look at what happened during the Trump years. Look at how Barack Obama and Barack Obama deputies spied on the Trump transition team. They spied on Donald Trump. This is all third world, right? This is not supposed to come from America. This is not an American thing to spy on your opponents, to try to imprison your opponents. It's third world. Right now, Iran embodies what all the third worldists, what all the Maoists have prized for decades, right? That's why Obama partnered with Iran, why he sought to elevate Iran, because Barack Obama is a creature of the third world, and he's most sympathetic to the most vicious, ugliest third world regimes that are out there.
Well, I knew the time was going to go by too fast. Could you just comment maybe for a minute on you were in the we've been working with the Flynn people on this documentary that he's got coming out, and I understand you were interviewed for that production as well. Any insights you can give us there?
Well, I think it's going to be a very, very, very important production, and it's very exciting. I think that, first of all, people are going to have a pretty good understanding of who General Flynn is, the entirety of his career, but also there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that people have been looking to hear General Flynn speak about for many years, whether this was, how he was pushed out of the White House, how he was set up. So it's going to include things. It's going to include his insights on things like the FBI, on what was going on at the National Security Council, and it's not just going to be against about the plot against Donald Trump and the plot against Michael Flynn. It's also going to have General Flynn's insights on what's happening in the world today, where America's interests lay, what's important for Americans to be focusing on at home and abroad. Lots of people say, and they're right to a certain extent. And we have people on our side who say, hey, our real problems are here at home. Our problem is the regime who's chasing us here. It's not the regime in Tehran, not Beijing, not Moscow. It's what's happening here. And that's true, except it's very important to keep in mind that the people who are destroying this country here are partnered with American adversaries abroad, whether that's China or Iran. This is a very important thing to understand. And I think that General Flynn has a terrifically broad view and understanding of what we, as Americans who love our country and who treasure our liberties, what we're up against right now. So yeah. I'm very eager for the film to come out, and I'm sure your audience is going to be really thrilled by it too.
Any predictions on how the presidential election plays out in November?
Well, I mean, it will be a historic event. Americans have been living through a lot of history the last few years, and it's going to be more history. And you see these people. I mean, they're determined to destroy Donald Trump, and they're determined, as they've shown. It's not just Donald Trump. They're determined to destroy Donald Trump supporters, right? So there's a lot going on. What I will say, though, is look. We want a Republican victory. We want a Donald Trump victory. But no matter what, we're going to be fighting, right? I mean, Americans who love this country are going to be fighting for a while. Americans have been fighting for our liberties for a very long time, and this is for our generation. This is our fight. And that is not going to be decided in November. That fight will continue, whether Donald Trump wins or not. Again, would certainly be a huge W in the win column, right? But our fight will continue no matter what. And if Donald Trump does not win, I mean, what are people going to do? Say, well, okay, I guess that's it. America's finished. I'm rolling it up. I'm just going to go hang out and live in the woods. No, we're not going to do that. It's our country. We love it. We're going to fight for it.
Can you leave us with any contact information where our viewers can follow your work?
Yeah, Truth Social, definitely. Where I'm at Lee Smith, then on Twitter /X at Lee Smith DC, and also I've got a locals page, Lee Smith Locals, leesmith.locals.com, where I'm publishing a lot of original content. I'll be publishing more in the coming weeks and months, especially heading into election season. And I try to interact with readers whenever I can, which I really enjoy, and I learn from a lot as I really enjoyed interacting with you here, Steve. Thanks so much again.
Well, thanks for coming on, and don't forget about his latest book, The Permanent Coup, a great read. Some of it unpleasant as you have to relive some of the attacks on America.